Hello. And in this message, I wanted to address or communicate the message um, of increased need to to facilitate your being into lighter forms of living, and that includes the basically the densities in which we participate in, and how those densities affect our being on the whole, and then the process of the current shift that is leading you to lighter densities, and what you can do to help facilitate better forms of transitions, and then better forms of acceptance, your physical form accepting the lighter densities that are coming your way, and the lighter density that your higher being is trying to incorporate into your living. And so part of those densities and part of that structure lies in the experiences we participate in, and then also the diet that we partake in, and then also the thoughts that we think. And so uh, the 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 shift is taking us into a place where everything about our being or everything about our existence is now desiring or wanting or flowing towards a later form of living. And so I wanted to address those three aspects, if they can be grouped together, as things that would facilitate further blocks of your own awakening. And so, to address the first one is the things we participate in, right? The parts of self that we have come very accustomed to, have gotten very acclimated to and very used to densified form of living. So going out into the world and participating in things that carry very strong densities, very heavy densities. And we have become very accustomed to that, or in fact, we just simply resonated with them all the times in the past. So to us, we never felt like this is not something that is healthy for our being, or this is not something that provides or generates the right outcome out of our desires. But if you're listening to this message, and if you have been, following everything that has been happening to you, the density of you can no longer function in the set of physical activities, the physical interpretations that you have become so used to. Because the density of you, the higher nature of you, your own path to awakening, is basically carrying this lightness, or is desiring this lightness, and then the desire for this lightness, and then the energy that are propagating your intent, that is propagating the lightness through, um, would start to get repelled, or bothered by the frequencies of the actions that in the past were actually full of density and full of this burden type of existence that you never realized that they were. And so what I want to highlight is it's not even necessarily that you will have to sit there and think, well, what does it mean to be light? And what does it mean to participate in the densities that are lighter? You will simply, by the nature of your awakening, you will start to feel uncomfortable in the densities that are now no longer resonating with your being, and that are because they are of the higher form of density, that are, that have been part of your being, that functioned in a non-aware cognitive way of your living. And so because of that, things will stop resonating. And so you don't necessarily have to start changing things, in the sense that this is a form of doing. Like, you don't have to start doing something. You just have to simply listen to your intuition and start not doing something that your body's already asking you not to do. And so tune into that, tune into the call that you're already experiencing inside, and start trying to force something in that no longer fits. Stop trying to force something that no longer resonates with you because your being is now functioning at a higher, or wanting to function at an even higher form. And so that the actions of densified existence, that are, has served their purpose and have had their time, now need to fall away. And so listen to your internal self, your heart, your stomach energy, um, your um, your sacral, the feeling of the butterflies, the feeling of the tensing of the stomach, the tensing of the throat, the heart closing down. All of those are the signs that your body is rejecting those actions, and then you need to move past, and just simply separate yourself for those densities. So that's the first one. The second one is your diet. So basically, there's not a prescription for diet. Like from my personal three-dimensional standpoint, um, just like the message that you now received with the actions, the diet will naturally, in that same way, flow into the form that is designed for you at that particular moment. And so you will find that there's certain foods, just like certain actions, that you will no longer resonate with. And you don't have to, go to a dietitian or talk to a guru to figure that out. Again, it is this internal knowing that you will already have within you. Just simply listen to it. Don't avoid it. Don't try to push through it. Right. So if there's an action that you're participating in that by default breathes in certain type of diet, those two, both of those features, even though they might come as coinciding entities with each other, possibly could no longer work, right? So the action itself that by default facilitates a certain diet, and then I can extend this further into the third thought is, and then therefore facilitates certain type of thought, um, just simply would not fit in, right? So there, that your whole being will start to feel this uncomfort, uneasiness. In my three-dimensional form, I want to say that I started, certain foods started to make me nauseous, to where, in the past, the experience of going to a specific type of restaurant, or participating in certain type of ritual, um, no longer worked. Right? It that same thing that used to bring me pleasure started to bring me discomfort and nausea, and it actually started to make me sick. Why? Because the message, the intuitive message that I was having is, this is not something that is any longer resonating with you. And so as I was in the process of avoiding listening to my own higher self, I was still placing myself into those situations. And then those situations were actively making me sick. So, you know, a very natural way to just basically your higher self, your higher being, working your way into the higher path of you living. Not through righteousness, not through I'm better than you, not through oh, I'm this and you're that. It has nothing to do with any three-dimensional, judgmental forms of duality. This is simply you following your guidance and simply following your internal path into your awakening. And so, again, actions, if they're not resonating, if they're making you sick, if you feel uncomfortable participating or even going with them, and you're trying to find an excuse of why not, just there's a blanket statement that all of those actions, it is time to release them and let go. And you don't have to go out and search for new things. The new things will kind of automatically come your way. You will feel naturally drawn to certain things, and you'll feel naturally repulsed by others. Same thing with the diet. You will feel naturally drawn to certain things and naturally repulsed to others. And so, again, not a prescription for any kind of certain diet, but this is a prescription for you to follow your intuition of what no longer works, right? If you're putting something into your mouth and it just does not feel right, right? 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, your stomach is not feeling right. Um, you having indigestion, you have nausea, you're just not sleeping well after a certain meal, right? Or a certain drink. That is your body allowing you opportunity to come into cognition that you need to release that way out of your being. And so then the last one is thoughts, right? And this is the harder one to remove because a lot of thoughts in our in our psyche, in our three-dimensional form. If you haven't been doing a lot of meditation, or if you haven't been doing a lot of cognitive awareness work, they just kind of run subconsciously, unbeknownst to ourselves, right? But how this will present itself, or how the need to rewire your thoughts will present itself, is if you're participating in certain actions, or certain hobbies, or you're spending time with certain groups that propagate certain type of thinking, or they propagate certain type of mental processing, not even necessarily by the words that you're hearing in those groups, but later by the thoughts that you're thinking, and when you're evaluating the conversations that you have had. um, if that if those thoughts generate discomfort, right, and keep you up at night, and generate disease, not from the sickness standpoint, but obviously I'm using that word knowing that sooner or later they will lead to the actual disease, but disease, then you know that your thoughts need to be changed, right? And so mental workouts of stilling your mind, of being in place of calmness, in place of peace, in place of stillness, in place of non-conversation, would start to have you recognize the type of thoughts you have rolling through your head, and then the goal, your higher self's goal, is to start to rewire your being into non-thinking, into non-doing, into non-perception, and simply allow yourself to center into the peace. So that is where this is all going, right? As you release this density, the peace will start coming. But then you have to be cognitively aware. What is it that you're actively doing today, and just ongoingly? What is it that you're participating in that is actually inserting density into your form? And, this is the harder thing to recognize, but sometimes those things are drastic. They require drastic change. They require drastic reevaluation of your being, of what is it that you choose to have as your life. Who is it that you choose to, call your friends, your family members. Um, you can still have the family members, but realize that the density of certain actions no longer allow you to live in the higher form of awakening, right? And so changing your frequency, staying in your own thoughts as opposed to adapting the thoughts of the family, or adapting the thoughts of a work environment, or adapting the thoughts of a friend group, right? Um, it is difficult to do if you're still participating in all those things, but it is a choice into what is it that you decide to call your truth, right? And so sooner or later, hard decisions have to be made. If is it easier to abandon a certain pattern, to abandon a certain lifestyle, than to continue to deny yourself the awakening, that centeredness that you're already trying to establish within your being. And so there's a lot of hard questions and hard decisions, but I'm hoping this video will allow you to recognize the signs, or recognize the internal turmoil that you are necessarily holding on to, because you're simply trying to hold on to something that no longer fits. Um, kind of a rewiring of your nature, but in a very easy and slow and receptive way, to where you're not being driven into it, and you're not being forced into it. Your own being within yourself is basically kind of guiding you slowly, very gently, into the path of your higher being. And so, listen, the message, the the tranquility of self comes whenever you start to listen, right? When you start to pay attention to these little micro messages. They're always telling you something, right? They're always telling you to oh, more of this, less of that, because your being is being guided into those the patterns of living. the patterns that allow you to shed the density, and start living in a higher vibration of you. Start to start to find you, start to live as you. So happy acknowledging, happy following your intuition, and happy living. And thank you for listening.